Hey folks, we're going to be talking about the rotator cuff today. We're going to go ahead and define that term, talk about the constituent components of the rotator cuff, and talk about what happens when this area is injured. So without further ado, let's dive in. The rotator cuff is composed of four muscles and their associated tendons. This stabilizes the shoulder while it's moving around, and a tear is just when one of those four muscles or tendons gets torn. We are around the glenohumeral joints capsules, so the structure that just holds the humeral head and the glenoid fossa of the scapula. And we're also near the the coracoacromial ligament. So this spans the distance between the coracoid process and the acromion. This acts to prevent upward dislocation of the humerus, so we can see that right here. It's very helpful to have. Then we can start talking about the constituent muscles. So these are our sits muscles: subscapularis, infraspinatus, teres minor, and supraspinatus. We use a lowercase t for teres minor just to remind us that it's teres minor, not major. So I'll continue on in a moment, but let's go through each of these muscles so you all know what I'm talking about. Supraspinatus is the first one, and this is going to hang out in the supraspinous fossa of the scapula. So supra meaning above, spinatus meaning above the spine of the scapula. And it's going to run to the greater tubercle of the humerus. Okay. And there are attachments, as you guys saw that there. So supraspinous fossa running to the greater tubercle of the humerus. You can say the superior facet if you want to be nitpicky. It is innervated by the suprascapular nerve, a branch of the brachial plexus, and the muscle produces abduction under 15 degrees, so it's like an initiator of abduction. Once we pass this threshold, the deltoid's going to take over that role. Next up, we have infraspinatus. So I didn't want to draw the entire skeleton again, so again, we're just zooming in on this area, all right? So the infraspinatus hangs out in the infraspinous fossa, and it's going to run to the middle facet of the greater tubercle. So this is also innervated by the suprascapular nerve, and it's going to rotate the arm laterally. So if you can picture this muscle belly shrinking, that would produce rotation in this manner, right? If I'm pulling from here down, it's going to pull the arm and rotate it in that manner. So I hope you can visualize that. But there are our origins and insertions. And let's continue on to teres minor. So this originates at the middle of the lateral border of the scapula, and it's going to run up to the greater tubercle as well. So I've said greater tubercle 3 times now, which is nice because you only have to remember this for these 3 muscles anyways. The supraspinatus attaches here, the infraspinatus attaches here, and so does teres minor. So that is a nice common denominator for you. The teres minor is innervated by the axillary nerve, another branch of the brachial plexus, and it's also going to rotate the arm laterally. So it acts just like infraspinatus, just with a smaller muscle belly. So if I were to imagine this shrinking down and pulling on the arm, it would rotate it in this manner. So just to remind you guys, this is a posterior view of the scapula. Now we're going to look at an anterior view for this last muscle, right? So now we're looking at the opposite side. So as we can see, subscapularis is this 4th muscle, and it takes up the whole view of the scapula. So it sits in the subscapular fossa, and then it runs to the lesser tubercle of the humerus, because now we're on the other side. It is innervated by the upper and lower subscapular nerves, another branch of the brachial plexus, and it's going to produce medial rotation of the humerus. So now that we're on the opposite side, if I shrink this muscle belly down, it's going to pull this way, which is towards the midline, so that's going to produce internal or medial rotation of the humerus. So those are my 4 rotator cuff muscles, and we can go back here. So if we can picture, this is, again, subscapularis, the rest of those muscles coming around, that's going to form a cuff around the humeral head. And a lot of these muscles dealt with internal and external rotation, so this is why we call it the rotator cuff. The glenohumeral joint is a ball and socket joint. So there's a lot of range of motion and mobility here. But with increased mobility comes inherent instability. So we want all these supportive muscles here to regulate that increased range of motion. We also have something called the acromion bursa. So if I roll over here to this drawing, we'll have a bursa right underneath this acromion. A bursa is just a sac of synovial fluid, and that helps lubricate this area so it's not grinding against bone. Okay, now what happens in the case of tearings? This occurs when tendons are violently stretched and torqued. So if we're in an uncomfortable and compromised position and we introduce a torquing motion to the region. So let's go back to this drawing. If I were to fully abduct the arm, so bring it up, and now I'm parallel with the ground, right? And then I introduced torque, so I start twisting in either way, just cranking the arm. That can produce a rotator cuff tear. So this can occur, playing many sports or just, roughhousing or climbing trees. This can occur. So if we go back, we can see that the supraspinatus tendon is mostly at risk here. So look at this again. The tendon is running underneath the acromion and the spine of the scapula. When we are in that compromised position, we are impinging that tendon even further. So I hope you guys can visualize why supraspinatus is most at risk for these rotator cuff injuries. These can be partial or complete tears, depending on how bad it was cranked at the time of injury. These tears can also be chronic. As we age, the blood supply to the region gets a little bit diminished, and we can just have chronic pain and issues with the area because there's just so much motion that is capable of, and that can get painful as we age. Bone spurs can also produce some pain and tears because, as we see here, there's just so many bony structures around these muscle bellies. And if I start forming little rocklets near them, that probably wouldn't make them happy. But yeah, that's everything I have for you guys. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to drop a like. And if you think this would help anybody else studying the body, please share it with them. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and thank you so much for watching.